Hey baby, what you no good.
Of the day, a surprising revival in religion underway right now. For the first time in decades, research suggests that the decline of Christianity in the U.S. has now slowed down and may have actually leveled off. And the return to religion is trending among Gen Z men and those with higher education. Now, the reason, according to a new report from Chapman University's Center for Demographics and Policy, is this, quote, many young men report feeling culturally dislocated or villainized by progressive secular discourse regarding masculinity. Traditional forms of Christianity, particularly Catholicism and Orthodoxy, offer a narrative of responsibility, sacrifice, and hierarchy that appeals to men seeking a defined role in a fluid world. Now, the report also breaks down weekly religious attendance by education level, and those with postgraduate degrees are at 30%. People with bachelor's degrees, 28%. Emily, to add to the of the day, a surprising revival in religion underway right now. For the first time in decades,
the King's Global conduct along this vein every year, but when I first saw this year's data from the research, I was quite shocked and quite depressed by it. And I wonder what your reaction was when the data first came in.
Well, I'm sorry that we've depressed you in a world where so much is already pressing on us, but I think it's important to understand. Yes, we've been doing this research at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership with Ipsos Mori for several years now. We were one of the first to shine a light on the fact that gender equality attitudes seem to be going backwards amongst young men and boys, teenage boys. And year after year, we've tried to dig further and further into that. In the time period, more and more people have come to recognise that there's a difference now between how young people are seeing the world, particularly young men, and older generations. When I first saw this research, I too was very confronted by it, because as a progressive politician, I've always lived with the sense that every generation is a bit more progressive than the generation that went before. And one of the things that was going to combat gender inequality in our world was that sense of progress. And then to see in the research, actually, the younger generation is more conservative on these questions than people my age, that deeply troubled me, and it continues to.
One of the headline findings that a lot of people will pick up on is that a third of young men interviewed believe that a wife should always obey her husband. And 1/3 also said a husband should have the final word on important decisions. And this is really different from their parents' generation. Why do you think we've seen such a generational shift? Why is there that disconnect?
I wish we had all of the answers. At the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, where we would love to do a very deep evaluative project into the attitude formation of young men. We're working at the moment on intuition. But I think the intuition would lead you to a few conclusions. One, of course, there is the manosphere and increasingly a cultural zeitgeist that masculinity is about physical fitness, it's about the ability to project force, it's about dismissive attitudes, even misogynistic attitudes towards women. Early access to pornography, I think, is probably part of the mix. I think, too, that the generation of young men, Gen Z, to use the terminology, would be the generation that were in school when a lot of programs were coming through for the girls, and people like me were creating those programs, Girls in Leadership, Girls in Science, and all the rest of it. But maybe they looked at that and thought, why are they getting all of these things and we're missing out?
So they felt left.
So not only were you creating the programs that specifically advantage the girls over the boys, no less, and you watched as the boys watched. You saw the boys watching and you knew what was happening, and you kept going and you kept doing it anyway. And now you're here totally clueless as to what's been going on. Why are the young men feeling some type of way? Welcome to the show, people. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys for coming out again. Please do hit that like button as we get started today. We're kind of revisiting a previous topic here. We're taking a look again at the Gen Z family phenomenon. I think it's been a little bit of a I don't know, a trope, I guess you could say, that young girls want family, young girls play with dolls and little baby dolls and whatnot. And you know, they're the ones who desire and grow up to want to have children and family and all that. And I think it's actually starting to look a little bit opposite, where I don't know, do young girls even play with baby dolls anymore? Now that I think about it, when was the last time I seen little kids outside and a little girl holding like a little baby doll? Do girls even play with baby dolls anymore? Shout out to Mr. O with the $2 super chat. Appreciate y'all coming out here. Appreciate y'all coming out here tonight. He says, things that make you go, do little girls even play with baby dolls? Things are changing quickly, y'all.
Behind.
They felt left behind. I think the change that there has been in understandings about sexual consent, the Me Too movement, the shining a spotlight on issues of consent for some young men, I think that probably has also made them more tentative and anxious about relations with women. So I think all of that is in the mix. It's quite complicated. And then it is difficult to do the transition for any young person from teenage years to young adulthood. That's always been true. But the statistics tell us it is particularly true for young men today. It can be very hard to make that transition. And of the young people who are not in training, not in work, it is disproportionately young men now.
You've raised a lot of issues there, so let's delve into some of them. I mean, do you feel like misogyny itself has actually changed? What we're seeing now is not sort of the sexism that we saw in the past, but with slightly better algorithms. There are actually different elements to it.
Shout out to the new misogyny. We got like a neo-misogyny. You know, it's a misogyny for the new age. These young kids are doing it different now. These young men are doing it for themselves now.
I think misogyny has always been with us, and I think it's been perhaps more expressed and less expressed. I think in my generation, the more that people came to understand gender inequality, the cultural predisposition of workplaces, of politics even, became more and more that you shouldn't show misogynistic behaviour, that there was a price to be paid. I'd like to think that I was one of the people who helped bring that change.
Right. There was a price to be paid for so-called misogyny, which, you know, in practice, that could just be, you know, she don't like me and now I don't have a job anymore, right? In theory, though, it was, oh my God, all these evil men are doing mean things to me. But in practice, is she hate me and now I got to go get a new job.
But for others to judge. I think now with the online environment, there are plenty of ways of letting your inner misogynist out without paying any price. So it's partly that, but I also think it's partly new elements. I mean, you know, men my age did not grow up with this kind of manosphere. Men my age did not grow up with the very early access to very violent pornography that young men have today.
I mean, when you mention some of the sort of basics of feminism and gender,
and they keep blaming, like, you know, the adult videos or whatever. I don't think the adult videos are really, I mean, I can criticize that thing for days, but still, I don't think that's the problem. That's like a scapegoat, honestly. That's a whole different, separate problem.
Equality to young men today, that they almost roll their eyes. I mean, that's not resonating. Some of that messaging that we were raised with doesn't cut through anymore.
It doesn't. And I think as feminists, as activists, as someone who's been at this for literally decades, there is a sort of deep reflective piece here that the research is calling on us to do. When we look at the research across all age cohorts, it's different cohort to cohort, but we see substantial numbers of people say either gender equality in their country has gone too far or it's gone far enough. And this is a survey of almost 30 countries, so we're talking right around the world. And you know, yet we know the statistics show it hasn't gone anywhere near far enough if we're looking at life outcomes for women, leadership outcomes for women, and all the rest of it. So what is explaining that disconnect?
But it is also caught up in the sort of anti-wokeism. It's almost like feminism is now lumped in with being woke.
Absolutely. I think we've been talking about gender equality for a long time, and a lot of people have heard all the noise and they think that it has resulted in lots of progress. So there's a difference between the noise and the progress, but they're hearing the noise.
Yeah. Basically what she's coping with right now is we've been listening. Men as a group, as a class, as a species or whatever, men have been listening. And then men have responded, right? We listened, we heard, we gave in. Women have programs, women have systems, they have all the things, right? Women have all the things. They have many things. Women have many things now. And now that they have many things, they won't shut the hell up. What is it about giving women all these things that it just stops them from shutting the hell up? We thought as men, if we gave you the things that you were crying about, you would shut the hell up. But no, here you are with all the things and you're still crying and you'll never shut the hell up. Why?
And I can't shut up. I wish I could. I really wish I could shut the fuck up, but I can't.
In terms of the self-reflective piece, I think we, and I lump myself in with this, we have allowed to settle an impression that more for women always means less for men, that this is a zero-sum game, whereas actually the research clearly shows, my own life experiences show, that when we rise together. A gender equal world would be a better world for men too. But that
let me look at that research. Can you put that research online? Put that research on the internet. Let everybody look at the research, because you notice how everybody says, oh, the data this, the data that. But why does all the data sound like anti-common sense? You know, all the data seems to go against everything that we experience every day. I want to look at your numbers.
Is not commonly believed. And then I think there have been programs done in the name of diversity, equity and inclusion, which were ineffective, which were easily parodied, which were resented by the workforce that they were brought to. And figures like President Trump and others have channeled that into a political campaign against woke, against gender equality, against feminism.
And is society in general failing to provide sort of role models of what, you know, equality looks like in a more sort of positive way, from men and from women?
Yes, I think we haven't provided enough of a sense of what that world could look like. And when you just reflect on this data and you see amongst young men and more young women, particularly young men, but also young women, there is more of a latch on to traditional gender norms and stereotypes. I think we need to remind those norms and stereotypes confine men too.
Those norms and stereotypes that you call confining was just basic order and structure. And order and structure by nature is confining, but it's confining for a purpose. We need to confine our wildest impulses. You know what I mean? We must restrain our base urges. And that's what they're running from. That's what she's calling freedom, is allowing her base urges to run wild.
A significant proportion of young men say to be a man, you've got to be physically strong. Well, there are lots of men who are not ripped, who are not in the gym.
Being strong is better than being weak. If you work out a little bit, you'll be stronger the day before. I mean, you'll be stronger the day after than you were the day before. And nobody says you have to be buff. Nobody says you have to be an action figure in a movie. You know, you don't have to have the 300 body, but being stronger is always better than being weaker. Why is that a bad thing?
Every second day, that's not their body type. That's not who they are. And all of this clutching for traditional stereotypes is just going to make them feel bad. There are young men who would, given every choice in the world, possibly say they want to go into the caring professions. They might want to be a nurse. They might want to be a childcare worker. They might want to be an aged care worker. But if traditional stereotypes settle, they will just be viewed as odd if they select those pathways. So, you know, opening up, taking the sort of gender stereotype bars down actually gives everyone more options, more choices.
So why do you think it is that so many women are drawn to this trad wife trend? I mean, there are millions of followers on social media, this lifestyle that they promote around submission and the domestic life. You know, they often dress up in 1950s kind of clothes. I mean, what is it about that is so appealing for women?
Online trad wife culture is basically like a Bridgerton type fantasy. It's like watching one of those late Victorian era type TV shows Everything looks pretty. Everything looks delicious and amazing. You can imagine yourself there. You want to be in that frame. It's all a fantasy projection, but I mean, a modern trad wife is just, I don't know what, being a housewife, I think, is just basically, at this point, there aren't a lot of true housewives in modern American culture, basically for economic reasons. And so the whole housewife, trad wife projection thing, it's a fantasy life. That's all it is. It's just, it's like girl smut. It's smut, man. It's like smut for girls, but, you know, TikTok.
It's kind of bemusing to me that anybody would think it was appealing to be in a 50s outfit with a full face of makeup at 5 a.m. milking the goat. You know, this is not my aspiration for myself. We actually did some research on this last year, and we found when we dug into it that young women who consume a lot of that trad wife content actually don't want to be trad wives. It's a fantasy. And it's a fantasy about having taken off your shoulders all of the difficulties that the world currently presents in navigating work and family life. So these young women have looked at older generations of women, you know, really work every hour in the day times 10 to manage a career, having children, a home, all of it. And they've just looked at it and gone, oh, too hard, I'm not going to do that. And then there's this quite beguiling.
And that's really one of the issues that's kind of like killing the birth rate and then killing dating, honestly, and pair bonding and whatnot. Economic pressures, along with this idea that as women, I mean, actually, it's more of a practical reality at this point. We're no longer like on the cusp of some type of feminist revolution. We're generations past it now. And it's just a practical reality that women are going to turn 18 and enter the workforce, and there won't necessarily be a 20-year-old husband waiting for them when they get out of college. It's just not happening like it used to back in the day. And that's having a lot of knock-on effects. It's making everything kind of risky from there on.
You know, swan around in a penny looking amazing and apparently raising the perfect kids with the perfect husband. So there's something relieving in that, but it's not that they actually want to wake up as a trad wife.
One of the other bits of data that was interesting that I think people will latch on to is that Gen Z men are most likely to believe that women who have a successful career, there's a duality here, are attractive to men. 41% agreeing with this statement compared to 27% of baby boomers of both genders. This is a real renegotiation in a way of these sort of gender roles we have in society, that successful women are very sexy, but I still want my wife to sort of stay at home and obey me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this adds up. I don't think it does add up.
No, it's a real duality.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Young men are disproportionately saying success at work is sexy, and maybe there's a practical end to that too. You know, people know, young people, it's very tough to make out your economic pathway, to maybe end up owning a home, to have the options that income brings you, including the options to have children without, you know, worrying about every cent, every pound, where that's going. But they want someone who is forging ahead at work, but apparently submissive at home. I mean, these women don't exist, I don't think.
And
everybody was looking for a fantasy right now. Everybody's looking for something that's just not practical, I guess, right now. I want to jump to something else I found earlier today.
I mean, what if I don't want to live the way you live?
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea. Everybody wants this. Everybody wants to be us.
What if I don't want to live the way you live? I mean, what if I don't want to live the way you live?
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea. Everybody wants this.
When I was a teenager, this was the image of being a feminist. I definitely consider myself an entrepreneur. Not only am I an influencer, but I'm also a designer, a tech entrepreneur, an advisor, an investor.
Whenever there's a quote-unquote glass ceiling, there's an iron woman right behind it.
You're a couple years out of new school, which is the most...
Just a few months.
It was being a girl boss, a powerful career-focused woman who made it to the top of her field.
I don't exactly know what you do or how you do it, but when you walk through these gates, things start happening.
You know, I got to tell you, I think, and it's totally like a tangent, but I think the girl boss phenomenon is totally ruining movies and television. Every time you watch something on TV, there's a girl boss who comes in and make the guys look dumb and makes herself the victim / hero of the thing. And it's oh my God, I'm tired of girl bosses. Every time you look at a screen, there's a girl boss looking back at you.
But for teenage girls these days, it's all about living a soft life. Not reaching the top of the corporate ladder, but instead quiet quitting, being a stay-at-home girlfriend, or even a trad wife.
We like cooking, we like running a home, we like supporting our husbands.
Trad content is wildly popular on social media. It's got this beautiful farmhouse aesthetic and dreamy images of plush domestic bliss. It's a relaxing reprieve from...
Now, to be fair, the trad wife is a lot more appealing image than the girl boss, but part of me thinks that the trad wife is just a girl boss in a different outfit. I'm just, you know, I'm jaded. I've lived long enough to be suspicious of everyone and everything. And the trad wife thing just feels like a girl boss with an apron on and a baby on her hip.
The chaos of modern life. But to me, a journalist who's been covering right-wing media for nearly a decade, a lot of the tradwife discourse online sounds suspiciously similar to the types of things I hear from dark money-funded think tanks in DC.
When you get married to somebody who does all the thinking for you, it is so nice.
You used to only hear that kind of talk coming from guys like this.
I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree. That's a really good reason to go to college, actually. You will find a husband.
How did this suddenly go mainstream? So I went onto the homestead and into the kitchen and to a Turning Point USA conference to meet some real-life tradwives and find out who they really are and what they think.
I just don't want to get bullied by teenagers.
Don't want to get bullied by teenagers. It's because you're chubby. You're husky. We all know that's why they bully you. But anyway, shout out to my man Smarty Pants with the 199. We all know who to blame. Little hat right there. I see the little hat you put there. Hit that like button, y'all. Hit that like button. We got a lot, well, not a lot of conversation, but we got a lot of content. We might have a little conversation behind that. But hit that like button, y'all. We are just getting into it.
Give me the money. Give me the money for all that I would do. Give me the money.
My husband gets up way before I do because I actually have a lot of trouble waking up for alarms. And he grabs Misha, that's our toddler son, sort of like steers him into my room. And it's like my favorite part of the day. We come downstairs, I make some breakfast, and then sit down and do our morning prayers together.
Esther is 24 years old and lives in Ohio. She's exactly what I picture when I think tradwife.
People would say that I live very traditionally because I have a toddler, I'm pregnant with another child, I got married young, my husband and I are devout Catholics.
You know what? That's a good look. It's a good look. Got married young. She's slim. He's chubby because she feeds him good. Got a little baby, one on the way. That's a good look right there. It's very, very white coated, by the way. They live in the middle of Ohio. They go to Catholic church. They pray every morning. Very, very white coated, by the way.
Also seems to have nailed the soft life.
I really love having the space to unfold slowly and kind of center yourself in the morning.
And I do understand why this is.
Shout out to Barefoot and Pregnant. This is why, though, I really don't like to go in on trad wife content. I'll be suspicious, but on the whole, I think it's good marketing. Barefoot and Pregnant is a great marketing campaign. We got to make Barefoot and Pregnant great again.
Is appealing to some young women. While our grandmothers were told to look pretty so you can marry a man who will take care of you, millennial women like me got a more empowering feminist message in the 2010s.
Sorry I'm late, but I had some very important business to attend to.
#girlboss. We didn't need to rely on a man to have our own bejeweled American dream. We could be a CEO. As a baby millennial, I was set on living the
A CEO. Oh God. You see, this is the type of shit that make men sick of women. Not a goddamn CEO. You know, once the CEO takes over, the company is going to be ruined. I promise you.
girl boss life. I wanted to work in politics. But when we tried to lean in, a lot of us just fell down.
How do you have time for everything? How do you balance it all?
I don't. I'm very tired all the time.
Finding a job is hard. All the fucking girl boss feminist bitches lied to me.
I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive.
Why am I not allowed to?
She said, I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive. And I feel her on that. I love that for her, by the way.
Finding a job is hard. All the fucking girl boss feminist bitches lied to me.
I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive.
Why?
I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive.
To me.
I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive.
We got to get her married off right away. She's a great contender. We got to break her first. If you can break her first, a lot of the other ones will follow easily. I know, right? That's a great clip, isn't it? We got to remember that when life gets rough.
I don't have goals. I don't have ambition. I only want to be attractive.
Why am I not allowed to just vibe?
Some of those CEOs ended up creating the same toxic workplaces as their male counterparts, and certain types of women weren't allowed to girl boss even if they wanted to. The girl boss wasn't trying to change the way our economy works. She was just trying to succeed for herself in a broken system.
Girl boss feminism is so deeply rooted in capitalism.
In 2016, I became disillusioned with the whole girl boss thing. I became a journalist and traded in my pantsuit for a sweatsuit.
All right. You look better as a wannabe girl boss, you know? At least girl bossing kept you in shape. God damn, what the hell happened to you, woman?
Boss thing. I became a journalist and traded in my pantsuit for a sweatsuit.
It looked like you became a professional full-time lesbian. And you wrestle other fat bitches on weekends.
Now Gen Z is coming of age, and surprise, surprise, being a worker in America still sucks. The gender pay gap has only narrowed by 4 cents since 2003, and their degrees feel worthless as entry-level jobs disappear.
Wow, girl bossing isn't as easy as it looked, huh?
Totally get why some young women just want to escape to the prairie and bake sourdough. But I couldn't help but wonder, does wishing for a family necessarily mean young women are becoming more conservative?
No.
The right-wing movement certainly hopes so.
No. They're just crashing headfirst into the reality of adult life in the modern world.
Gone all in on recruiting young women who want out of the corporate rat race. They're investing big in a new class of social media savvy pundits who push conservative messaging to young women.
The feminist movement is in large part to blame for the fracturing of the traditional home, where women were coerced outside of their natural roles as mothers into the workforce.
They're cashing in on the girl boss backlash too, shaming women who don't want to have children or who want to have a career by calling them
a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives.
There are a lot of successful 35-year-old orthopedic surgeons that have cats.
The right-wing youth group Turning Point US.
Oh, they're shaming women, y'all.
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology.
Time has expired.
My life was threatened. Thank you.
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad.
USA is at the center of this messaging push. Last summer, I attended one of the youth conferences they host, Ground Zero for All Things Trad.
I wanted to do Air Force. I wanted to do FBI, was interested in police work, all of that. But then I really just came around to the perspective of what's more important in life. Is it going to be more important to me to have kids and a family in the future and that will last forever, or a career that, yes, could help people, but also isn't going to be relevant in a few years? And Charlie really says to choose one. And I thought about it. I was like, oh my gosh, like I've not been choosing the right thing. I've changed from not wanting to have any kids to I could see myself with 4 or 5.
And this is actually, this is like very much a marketing thing too. If you market family to women, to young women in particular, more of them will buy it. And what's been happening ever since, like, I don't know, the 90s. Look, you look at this thumbnail on the screen. It's a perfect example, right? Roddy Piper stars in the movie They Live, where there's like a reptilian alien invasion that's secretly taken over the country. And if you put on these glasses, you'll see the truth. You'll see the reality. You'll see the brainwashing and the programming, right? And a part of the programming of the reptilian overlords was marry and reproduce, right? So Hollywood, even back as far as the 90s, were kind of associating marriage and children with some type of negative, hostile thing. Like you were a part of the evil empire if you got married and had kids, right? So they were really selling the anti-family hedonistic world that we live in right now ever since then. Only now is it kind of, it's coming full throttle now. It's just getting shoved down everyone's throats. It's hard to ignore it, but they've been promoting anti-family for a long time. And if you actually start to promote family again, people will buy it.
Right-wing activists have also launched a women's magazine they call the Conservative Cosmo. In between fashion tips and celebrity gossip, EV Magazine features articles fear-mongering about the dangers of birth control, focusing on your career, and delaying having children. EV's editor-in-chief, Brittany Hugo Boom, also created a period tracking app that encourages natural family planning instead of the pill or an IUD. And she sells a supplement called Toxic Breakup to use after quitting hormonal birth control. Most of the app's funding came from right-wing billionaire Peter Thiel. This fits right into the larger reactionary right-wing movement, led by groups like the Heritage Foundation. And
even right now, she's kind of connecting the idea of family and children to like the reptilian overlords.
The Federalist Society. They've spent decades dismantling the social safety net established in the New Deal and chipping away at reproductive rights. And their scheming paid off big in 2022 when they overturned Roe v. Wade. Even tradwife influencers who aren't overtly political, their lives track well onto the 1950s inspired conservative vision of America, a Christian family with a man at the head and a subservient wife.
Again, look how white-coated everything is.
He goes out to work, she joyfully keeps the home and minds the children. Their efforts seem to be working. In 2024, the youth vote had its largest swing towards Republicans in 20 years, especially with young white women. Democrats were stuck in outdated girl boss messaging. Meanwhile, Republicans had someone on the ticket who understood trad mentality all too well.
You have women who think that truly the liberationist path is to spend 90 hours a week working in a cubicle at McKinsey instead of starting a family and having children.
If my choice was between being a stay-at-home mother and doing Excel spreadsheets, I would definitely be a stay-at-home mother.
Right now, Esther does work. She's an adjunct professor of philosophy and classics at a university nearby, where her husband, JB, is a PhD student.
I don't think that having a career in general is important to me, but having this job is important to me. Teaching students, doing philosophy, reading these great books. This is so amazing and meaningful.
Notice there's a subtle inversion that just happened there. She's the breadwinner right now. He's in school full time, apparently. Modern life.
It's not easy because it's just really hard to have sort of moved away from a one-income household paradigm. The standard of living is just adjusted for there being 2 people working.
Esther and JB don't have a lot of money. How do finances and income factor into your decision about having children?
They don't. I mean, if we were like homeless, we would be like, this is really scary. We need to like be very careful not have any more children right now. But the decision to have children was just not something that was influenced by like our standard of living.
Have you had any unexpected costs with pregnancy?
Yeah, the big one for me is the midwife. I had a OBGYN, but I ended up switching to a midwife for what I consider safety reasons.
After a painful
What's that? What's the name of that speech impediment when you pronounce your R's as W's? Because I can swear she probably worked on it, but I hear her say things like safety reasons. Am I the only one picking up on that?
experience with a kidney infection during her first pregnancy, Esther needed more personalized care.
Whoa, that's super nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass out. That is so nice. Midwives are not paid for insurance, and it takes like half of my adjunct paycheck. There's other things too, like prenatal vitamins. I've got approximately 1 billion prenatals to take. When my midwife talked to me about what the recommended diet was for a pregnant woman, I'm like, there's no freaking way. Like probiotic kefir's kind of expensive. Yogurt's kind of expensive. We would look at like even like breakfast cereals and be like, oh my gosh, one day when we're fabulously wealthy, we will buy like Rice Krispies. And I remember just seeing like $50 worth of groceries and it's like all we have for like this whole week. And then like the person next to us has like multiple gallons of milk at a time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like
that's that welfare cart. Anytime you see a cart overloaded with groceries, and especially when it's a bunch of boxed items, boxed mac and cheese, microwave dinners, that's the welfare cart. It's almost always nobody who has to pay cash for groceries is buying a bunch of junk.
Multiple gallons of milk at a time, right? But it was just still kind of like psychologically hard for me to be like pregnant and like wanting to like make everything good in my like new little house and then having to buy the like possibly spoiled chicken from Kroger, you know? Like, what am I supposed to do?
I have a ton of kids. I mean, get married when you're too young, have more kids than you can afford.
Have as many kids as you can afford. Have more than you can afford.
Have a million kids.
Less burnout, more babies.
A more helpful suggestion came from a family friend. Go on food stamps.
She was like, there's this thing called WIC and there's this thing called CHIP and there's this thing called SNAP. And like, it's really important that you not feel any shame about that because it's for like poor pregnant young mothers. Like, this is who it's for.
They also got on Medicaid. Not sure that's part of the right's vision of the perfect 1950s trad life, but even some of the women at the Turning Point conference weren't buying that version.
They've just kind of been preaching like, always make a family, make a family, make a family. And it's just, I believe that women should have some sort of career field and stuff while also being able to have a family.
But how practical is that in the long run? Isn't that what we've been trying to do? Isn't that what we've been selling all this time? And we're realizing that it costs more to give women more effectively. Like, because for all the jobs women get, now they need childcare from the government. You need to spend more time in school. Your kids are going to be in school effectively 15 hours a day now because you got to work. You can't pick them up from after school until like 5:30, 6 o'clock.
I would love to settle down. The issue is that women are being priced into having to work, so it's not really an option.
Well, I mean, I think the goal of the government should be to help the working class, point blank, period.
But there's another key part of the trad life that I'm still curious about. Last summer, I spent more time at Turning Point conferences than I did with my own family. The aesthetic of trad that conservatives create is always the same. A beautifully decorated farmhouse in a perfect pastoral setting. And online, trad influencers like Ballerina Farm show us a vision of labor that's connected to the earth and produces tangible goods. A contrast to many jobs today where the fruits of your labor are usually just increased shareholder value. So I went to rural New Hampshire to meet another genre of trad wife, the homesteader, to learn what the soft girl life is like on an idyllic farm.
I get up early. I'm up by 6 most mornings. In the winter, I'm making a fire, doing yoga, and then I go right to farm chores for a couple hours before.
You really had to show us this retired lesbian to represent trad life? Come on now, you could have done better.
For work.
Jesse and Andy got married young, but other than that, their life doesn't look like Ballerina Farm at all. Who's doing most of these morning tasks?
That is not the trad wife look.
It's mostly me. I would say that I'm the farmer and I'm the outdoors woman. My husband does a ton of the housework, lots of things that make our life run.
My great domestic contribution is I love to clean.
Physical labor tasks.
This is total like propaganda subversion. You went and found the most beta trad couple you could find.
We often split those things 50-50. Heavy hauling, shoveling, splitting and stacking wood. I probably take a little bit more of the lead, but that's just because I like doing that stuff.
Yeah,
a little Japanese.
But yeah, we're always sharing.
But you definitely are like
chief rock hauler.
Yeah, the project lead. Like,
you're assistant rock hauler.
She'll delegate things to me.
I think that what was women's work and what was men's work is really hard to define. Like, I don't even know how we get clean towels. I don't know where they come from.
If their house works for them, good for them. But damn it, why'd you have to find the gayest looking trad couple ever? You're trying to make the trad wife look gay now. This is strange.
Another departure from the homesteading fantasy, Jesse works a corporate job, and so did Andy before he was recently laid off. Right now, Jesse is the primary breadwinner.
It has slowed down our ability to do large-scale projects on this property. It's hard to do things like replace our roof, replace our front door.
It's also slowed down the timeline on another big goal and a key element of trad life.
If the margins were less thin for families in this country, we would have had kids sooner. Housing was very expensive and took a long time, and we're extremely lucky. Most people our age have not been able to buy. Healthcare costs, if that wasn't as much of a factor, we would have had kids younger.
Yeah.
Jesse.
This is not a trad couple. These are liberals who left the city. This is another phenomenon that liberals engage in. 10 years ago, you would have met them on a corner in Williamsburg, having weird coffee at a gay cafe. They gave that all up because they really wanted to have a house in the woods and raise chickens. Like, this is more liberal shit. This is not a trad couple.
Is approaching the decision to have kids differently than Esther, but both of them value and prioritize family life.
I hope for the opportunity to stay home with my kids for at least their younger years.
I spent a whole day on the farm with Jesse.
When you complete the swing and slide motion, they're both together. Yeah!
Afterwards, I was tired. Is this how the ballerina farm lady feels all the time? As someone who comes from a lineage of homesteaders, is the soft feminine life of homesteading a realistic vision of the past?
No. A lot of that work is presented in a very leisurely or pleasurable way, when I think in reality for many women it was not.
It's way less pleasurable because you're doing the man's job. If you were in the house baking cookies and chasing toddlers around dirty laundry, you'd be having a lot more fun.
I understand the longing for a life where you don't have to work outside of the home, when that's a financial reality for most households. Like, it's very difficult to be a one-income household.
So then how do these trad wife influencers make it work? When I got back from Jesse's, I started looking a little more into Ballerina Farm, or Hannah Nealman. First things first, she's married to the JetBlue heir, so there's that. But they're actually not even a one-income household. Ballerina Farm isn't just an Instagram handle. It's the name of her online store, which has over 50 employees. And I'm pretty sure your average 1950s homemaker didn't have a personal assistant and homeschooling teacher. She's not even the only one with a second income stream. Many of the biggest tradwife accounts are selling you more than just their lifestyle.
Nora Smith, Calvin Klein.
It turns out that being a tradwife influencer is really just like being a girl boss. The girl.
Didn't I call it? I literally called it. I swear to God, I called it that like 20 minutes ago. This girl boss thing. The tradwives are just girl bossing with an apron on. I mean, and it's a better product. Don't get me wrong. Sell your product, always sell. But it's still a girl boss, though.
Girl boss and tradwife are two sides of the same capitalist coin. They're both turning their life into a personal brand and business. Both claim to be empowering, even feminist, but they're only for a certain type of woman. And they're isolated from their communities while they amass giant fortunes.
It's very aesthetically driven. It's about what looks good. It is a job to create that aesthetic. And that's the work that they're doing rather than the work of homesteading itself. Man, they make a lot of sourdough bread. I don't have time for that. It seems like they're always making bread.
I wasn't expecting to relate to tradwives at all. But what I heard from Esther and Jesse was not so different from what I and most other young women want. The ability to choose whether or not you have kids and when to do it. The ability to choose whether you want a career and to have time for family alongside work. Most importantly, they want policies that make those choices possible. Do you think that healthcare should be free?
Yeah, I do. I don't think it's in conformity with sort of traditional Catholic values to have people in debt for long periods of time for emergencies. I think that's really evil.
Esther's traditional values aren't stuck in some bygone era. They're relevant to the pressing issues of today. She relied on SNAP and Medicaid during her pregnancy, but Trump's big, beautiful bill makes severe cuts to both of those programs. Medicaid insures 2 out of every 5.
Now she's just doing more liberal propaganda stuff. That's just more programming. I want to jump to something else as we kind of explore this whole problem of young men wanting family more than women. The problem seems to be women, but you know, we're finding women are how do I phrase this? Women just want new things. I'll just put it that way. Just listen.
What is going on with choking and sex? Women would say, I don't like this. I don't know what's going on. And so that's millennial women. And nowadays, what we see with Gen Z women is that they'll experience the same things, but they're more inclined to say that they like it. Or they will ask a male partner to actually do it. They'll initiate it themselves.
Why are Gen Z women more likely to say they like it?
Because they grew up watching porn from a very young age, or they were exposed to porn at such a young age.
They're not playing with babies. They're watching porn. Is that what's happening? I was asking, how come young girls aren't playing with baby dolls anymore? Apparently, they're online gooning. Young women are gooning online, and it's melting their brains, y'all. It's melting their brains. God damn it. Somebody think of the children.
What are the actual stats right now on men versus women wanting marriage, and how far apart are they?
So it's actually more men than women in terms of the younger generations that want marriage. Women are more likely to say that they think marriage is an outdated tradition. This is probably the first time in history that this has become the case.
Gen Z.
So women are gooning online, and they're rejecting traditional stable relationships because they are gooned out, apparently.
He doesn't want to date. They want situationships.
They will do basically everything that you would do in a relationship, like go on vacation with the other person, have pet names and things, talk every day, text every day, spend tons of time together. And then, of course, one person falls in love with the other person, and the other person says, well, no, I didn't want that.
There is this huge group of young women who are not even interested in marriage at all anymore. How do we convince them otherwise? How do we bring them back around?
One solution would be to get rid of DEI, to allow men to succeed, because if men are more successful, women naturally are going to find that sexier. So they're going to want to pair up with these men.
But what do you
get rid of DEI and allow men to succeed, which would imply that DEI does not allow men to succeed, right? All men want is a chance to do the thing. Just let me do my dance. You up here trying to be a girl boss and shit. Just let me do my dance and everything will be cool. But no, that's too much. That's too much.
Successful, women naturally are going to find that sexier, so they're going to want to pair up with these men.
But what do you say to the 25-year-old man who feels demoralized and behind?
Don't let that derail you. Put your head down and keep working. What's your alternative? If you're going to sit there and play video games and vape all day long, that will be your life.
That is true. I mean, actually, as cold as that was, that is kind of true though. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit in the house and goon all your life away? That's not going to help. You're not going to win like that either. So you got to do something. You can't just hide in the house and goon your life away. But this is why men are coming up with solutions like, you know what? I'll stop gooning if you stop hiring women all over me, all right? Give me a job and I'll stop gooning. That's basically what the young men are telling you.
Huge group of young women who are not even interested in marriage at all anymore. How do we convince them otherwise? How do we bring them back around?
One solution would be to get rid of DEI to allow men to succeed, because if men are more successful, women naturally are going to find that sexier. So they're going to want to pair up with these men.
What do you say to the 25-year-old man who feels demoralized and behind?
Don't let that derail you. Put your head down and keep working. What's your alternative? If you're going to sit there and play video games and vape all day long, that will be your life in 20, 30 years. And I think the only thing worse than being where you are now is being in the exact same place 20, 30 years from now.
Kathy Spiller joins me now. She's the executive director of the Feminist Majority and the Feminist Majority Foundation and the executive editor of Ms. Magazine. Kathy, thank you for being with us this morning. I don't know what I'm more worried about, the intellectual effort that has been put into this effort, or the fact that no one's afraid to say it. They're not even hiding there. There's no fig leaf here. There's a proposed fig leaf that it's about having more children, but that's really not what this is about.
No, you're absolutely right, Belshi. And you laid out exactly the plan that they've spelled out in this new document by the Heritage Foundation. They are determined to use whatever levers of power they have under the Trump administration to change tax laws, to provide incentives for women to have more children, to get married younger, to stay married even in bad relationships. And as you note, it's all aimed at heterosexual couples. Upper and middle income will receive all the tax benefits. But I can tell you, I mean, this is the game plan of an authoritarian.
I like the idea of that. Tax benefits for heterosexual couples, all right? The government should encourage heterosexual couples instead of all this rainbow shit. It's better for the economy if the government would actually encourage heterosexual couples to be together.
Benefits. But I can tell you, I mean, this is the game plan of an authoritarian regime. And that is what this is designed to support. An authoritarian government that has control over its women and therefore over its men as well, making men more compliant because now they have larger families who depend on them economically. That was first discussed during the Reagan years. George Gilder, the economist, wrote a whole book about it. You've got to have tax incentives and restrictions that cause women to have larger families, stay married, and financially dependent on men. It's the only way they can control the larger population as well.
So, Kathy, you know, when Project 2025 came out, we went through every piece of this thing, and it's a horrible read. It's not very well written. It's 922 pages. Donald Trump said it's not really true. He's not tied to it, even though most of the authors of this are now have a senior role in the administration. How do you get past, for most people, that this is not a joke? That it sounds ridiculous. The stuff I read sounded ridiculous, but it's not fringe internet stuff. It's not a joke. These are people who are very proximate to power right now.
I can tell you, the more people find out about this, especially women, they are rejecting it. I mean, they are trying to put the genie back in the bottle, and they can't. They know they can't. And yet they continue to pursue these policies that punish women for stepping out of line.
Is it too late, though? Is it too late to put the genie back in the bottle? I know that's like a cliche. Obviously, you can't, but I do think we can kind of reverse trends. You know, if you promote a thing, especially with the power of government and corporate influence, if you promote a thing heavy, you will get more of that thing. People will, you know, sales will go up. So I don't think it's impossible to reverse. I think, you know, we do live in like the modern economy. The economics makes things very interesting, but I don't know if we're just totally doomed at this point.
They've managed to restrict abortion access in many states, although the feminist movement writ large has gotten around that with the abortion pill and mail order and telemedicine. I mean, at every step that they try and push us back, there is a tremendous effort on the part of women. You know, they can blame feminism, but feminism and the feminist movement reflected where women were as they gained more opportunities for education and for employment, paid employment, and for freedom. And they demanded more and more. And
they keep saying freedom, but freedom has to have a thing that it's free from. Like freedom from what, right? And what they keep saying is freedom from family, freedom from a husband, freedom from responsibility. And then they keep selling that as if that is making everybody happy. Everybody being free from responsibility is actually making everybody miserable.
And that's what we're going to see. I mean, we're just not going to go backward. They're not going to be successful, although sounding the alarm is critical. For example, right now, the Republicans are trying to push through the Save America Act in the Senate. That would dramatically harm access to the vote.
Oh, these hoes ain't trying to save America. The last thing these hoes want to do is save goddamn America. They are not about saving no America, y'all.
Overwhelmingly, you'll see young men more excited, more enthusiastic about having children one day than young women. I wanted to dig into it a little bit. And I also wanted to ask some young men and sort of people who work with and do polling on young men, like, what does that mean? Like, you want kids? Like, what kind of a father do you want to be? Does that mean you want to be an involved father and really spending a lot of time with your kids? Are you imagining like some kind of trad lifestyle where like you have a stay-at-home wife and you're going out to the office?
Anna North, my longtime colleague. She's also.
So you did pretty good.
Your beat. Parenthood, area to cover.
Right when Me Too was becoming really big. And so I reported on that for about a year, almost exclusively. And since then, I sort of do a lot of things, but a lot of it circles around, I typically call it American family life. I write a newsletter called Kids Today, which I think of really as a newsletter about kids' lives, like not so much about parenting. There's a lot of really great parenting newsletters out there, and I try to steer clear of advice. And instead, as much as I can, just to talk to kids about their experiences and learn about what kids are experiencing right now. And I've also kind of like been trying to have more empathy for children and figure out what it's like to be a kid today. When I had kids, I realized like how powerless you are as a kid and how other people dictate so much of your daily life. So I find myself a lot of times like trying to get in their headspace and think about what is that like and how do kids take back a little power.
How many kids do you have?
2.
I have one 6-year-old and another one on the way, actually.
Oh, congratulations. That's exciting.
In April.
Nice.
Should I be terrified?
Nah, it's fine.
The second?
You'll be fine. Your 6-year-old's big. Like,
Which I found very interesting and surprising in some ways and maybe not so surprising in other ways. What was it about this topic that drew you in? Was there something like some mystery you felt like you needed to solve? Like, what were you looking for when you like started reporting on this piece on how like Gen Z men and women are thinking about parenthood and how differently they're thinking about parenthood?
Yeah, no, I saw this really interesting poll of young voters, Gen Z voters, and it looked at male Trump voters, male Harris voters, female Trump voters, and female Harris voters, and asked them to rank like what are the things you think are important in a good life, essentially. And the male Trump voters actually rated having children as number 1. Among like 12 or 13 different options. Nobody else had it up that high. Not any of the women, no matter how they voted, and not male Harris voters either. And, like then I did some reporting on that poll and people said like, well, it's just one poll. Maybe you shouldn't put too much stock in it. But then if you look across polls, overwhelmingly, you'll see young men more excited, more enthusiastic about having children one day than young women. And
even though this economy is, it's nothing like the 1980s, nothing like the 1940s, and like everything gets more expensive, inflation goes up year over year. Yet, what is it that makes men want to have family more than women? And I wonder, are we learning something about just the nature of the male versus the female in the species? Because what if it is more of an evolutionary biology phenomenon where women seem to have families more out of a survival mechanism, not even like straight up direct survival, like feeding yourself, but in terms of like, in order to provide the cost benefit to a man that would, you know, allow you access to his resources, sacrifice, and all that, whatever else can come with that. Having being the foundation of the family unit is a kind of survival trade-off. And once you sort of remove that you know, survival mode phenomenon from women, because, you know, modern chicks and especially Black women love to say they've been in survival mode. Once you actually remove that survival mode, it seems like the desire to have children actually drops dramatically.
And I could think of a lot of possible reasons why that might be, but I wanted to dig into it a little bit. And I also wanted to ask some young men and sort of people who work with and do polling on young men, like, what does that mean? Like, you want kids? Like, what kind of a father do you want to be? Does that mean you want to be an involved father and really spending a lot of time with your kids? Are you imagining like some kind of trad lifestyle where like you have a stay-at-home wife and you're going out to the office? Like, what? I was just very curious about like what fatherhood meant to these Gen Z men who like are very excited to do it one day.
Yeah, I have the numbers here, and I don't want to butcher it, so I'll look at it. This is from your piece. So this is a 2023 Pew poll. And 57% of men between 18 and 34 said they wanted to have kids one day, like definitively. And only 45% of women said that. That was a little surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be. I guess I just would have assumed that those numbers.
I'm telling you, it's because little girls aren't playing with baby dolls anymore.
Would have been just closer.
I was kind of surprised by that. As you say, I thought it was a pretty big gap, especially given that the narrative that I think we had heard about young Gen Z people generally over the last couple of years is this is a generation that doesn't want kids. This generation doesn't want to get married. This is a generation that's like really worried about the future and like feeling really alienated and doesn't sort of want to take these steps toward conventional family. And so I thought it was interesting that these high numbers of Gen Z men were saying like, no, actually, we do want kids. If you dig back into the historical polling, it's a little wonky. There's some evidence that women without children for a long time have been had a little bit more trepidation than men without children. And partly that's for reasons that make sense. Like they know that their careers could take a hit. They've all read those articles about the motherhood penalty. They know that they will probably have to give birth, which men don't have to do, and deal with physical.
What do you mean probably have to give birth? Is there another option after you get pregnant? Like, if you want to have the child, aren't you going to give birth in one way or another? That was an interesting place to put a probably there.
Could take a hit. They've all read those articles about the motherhood penalty. They know that they will probably have to give birth, which men don't have to do, and deal with physical recovery and sort of deal with all of the stereotyping and stigmatizing that comes with like having a female body that becomes a mother in this world. So it's like not weird that young women might have more anxieties, but I think what was striking to me was the size of the gap and really the size of the enthusiasm among men of a generation that were expressing this like pretty like, conventional and pretty like social aspiration to have a family.
Having kids is just really hard and it's really expensive, increasingly expensive, especially.
It's expensive, but I don't think it's all that hard. People talk about it like it's building a nuclear bomb. People talk about it like it's designing a wormhole in space or something. I don't think it's as hard as people make it seem. It's emotionally taxing at times. Otherwise, it's just a routine.
If you live, when we lived in the DC area before we moved,
it is expensive.
We had a 6-month-old. Daycare was $2,000 a month. A preschool, $2,000 a month. That's, I understand why people look at that and go, shit, I can't afford a house. I can't afford this. Like this is a burden I can't take on even if I want to. But you talk to a lot of, there's several young men quoted in the piece. I think one of them was actually like 18. What is there how do you explain their increased interest? Like, what's going on there? Why are Gen Z men like increasingly fired up about being a dad? What are they telling you? What is the data saying? Like, why are Gen Z men increasingly interested in having kids and starting families?
Yeah, I mean, the way that one expert sort of put it to me was that, for a long time, it was assumed in American culture that you should want to have kids and that people would want to have kids. And it is women who have pulled away from it and men who have not pulled away. With the young men I talked to, I think I got a certain sense of that, where one of them, just talked about like his friends who are male think of this as like something they're going to do one day. They think of it as like, a capstone or like, just a really important part of a full life. And it's something that they assume that they're going to do.
What would you say are the most, like the primary reasons you get from women, or you see in the data from Gen Z women about why they're hesitant? What are the main reasons?
Well, one expert explained it to me like it's never been more costly for women to have a child. And that doesn't mean it's harder than ever to be a mom.
No, it means they'd rather work and party, and it's really just a putting off a responsibility ultimately, I think.
It means that many women, most women in the US probably have more options than they've ever had. So like, women's salaries still aren't at parity with men's, but they're higher than they've ever been. Women's educational attainment is really high. There's a sense that there's an increasing social sense that women can live a full life without becoming mothers, and that's fine. There's a lot more acceptance for it. So it's like, whereas women used to just really not have that many options for their lives, now they have lots, and you're giving some of that up when you have a child. It's documented that you're giving up some salary.
No question.
Yeah, you're giving up some time. So I think that's part of it, is just women have not reached equality with men, but they've come to approach it more and more. And so they have more and more choices. And having children becomes a more and more sort of costly choice. And then too, I think you'll hear from young women this concern that their partners are not going to pull their weight. I get into this in the piece that we have seen real shifts in terms of how much childcare men do, but it's not 50-50, and women know that.
Why should it be 50-50 though? Nothing is really 50-50. There's always a little bit of imbalance. Some people are just better at or more suited to do a thing than the other. This idea that it's supposed to be 50-50 is crazy work.
And, they may also increasingly know that they're going to be bringing in a lot of the money to just, data wise, most families are 2-income families. I think a lot of women also know that they are going to end up, contributing economically at least 50%, if not more than 50%. So I think there is a worry that they're going to be doing more than half on the home.
So notice when women are the breadwinners, you can just expect birth rates and marriage and family formation to decrease. You can put all the political spin on it. You can try to make somebody the bad guy. You can say men are bad. You can say women are bad if you like, but it's just a simple function. It's basically like a mathematical equation at this point. Once women cross a particular economic threshold of becoming like breadwinners, quote unquote, you can expect them to, the desire and their ability even to create a family will go down, because once they start to create a family, now their ability to earn, their breadwinning capacity goes down. And so they're looking at it like, well, why would I give up all this just to do that? And women are making an, quote, a logical decision, unquote, but it's illogical from just a human race survival standpoint. Like, your culture will die. The human race will survive. Your culture will die.
Front, they're going to be doing at least half, if not more than half, career-wise. And so I think that can start to seem like a bad deal too.
Maybe the thing that surprised me the most is that it would appear with Gen Z men in particular, it seems like the trend is that towards more like a preference for traditional division of labor, right? Or this idea that, like, to be a man, means to like be the breadwinner, right? Which was fascinating to me, and because I want to find this real quick because I don't want to get it wrong. And I'm just going to read the quote to you if you don't mind, because this is really shocking. And the quote is that, and this is a study from 2025. So 28% of Gen Z men, 28, said a stay-at-home dad was, quote, less of a man, compared with 25% of millennials. And this is what really shocked me. And just 12% of baby boomers. So
did they poll women about stay-at-home dads, though? I'm curious, what do women think about stay-at-home dads? Because my gut tells me women as a group don't want stay-at-home dads either.
12% of baby boomers said that staying at home as a dad made you less of a man.
And then this is another conundrum that feminism and this modern like she economy really can't grapple with. No matter how much money women make, no matter how much opportunity you give women, in order to sell women marriage and family and all that in large numbers anyway, you have to offset their quote opportunity cost, right? Which is a fancy way of saying the men have to have even more. No matter how much you give women, in order to keep the family numbers up, the men have to have so much more. And that's just not feasible on a grand scale.
I can't make sense of that because it just seems like my dad's generation, just had much more regressive views about this. Like, how do you make sense of that? Like, how did boomers have more, progressive views about this than Gen Z? That seems baffling.
I know. I thought that poll was really funny. And I also was really bowled over by the boomer numbers. I feel like I could do a story just on that poll.
It seems like it has to be wrong.
Well, what I wondered...
Is it possible there's a typo?
I know.
That, in the study or something?
It's like 121%. No, I mean, what I wondered about that study is I don't have the data in front of me of what percentage of boomer dads stayed home with their children while their children were young. But I wonder if you have boomer dads sort of, excuse me, looking back with hindsight at their lives and being like, oh, if I had stayed home, it would have been okay. Or just having more distance from, the direct act of childcare. But I do think it's of a piece with some polling and data that we see from Gen Z men, just expressing a variety of kind of traditionalist gender ideas. I talked to a guy who does a lot of polling with Gen Z, and he did say that when he polls young men, they really associate masculinity with being a provider, more so than any other sort of characteristic. So they're not associating it primarily with giving care, for example, which you could imagine. So I do think there is, I think, this move toward what you could call a more regressive gender structure among Gen Z men. But I also think that we're seeing other moves in the opposite direction.
Do you have a unified theory for why men are moving in that direction? Is it a reaction against something? Is it just the political winds just happen to be blowing that way at this moment in history? Or what do you think explains that?
It's hard because I have this feeling that any polling really flattens people's attitudes toward these aspects of life that are just incredibly complicated, even more complicated than who are you going to vote for? A lot of media geared toward young men right now is...
we about to blame the manosphere. Here it comes, y'all.
Not especially friendly toward gender equity. There's definitely a theory that trad wife content is and was mostly for young men. I feel like the trad wife is less ascendant than it used to be as an archetype. I
promise you, it's mostly women watching trad wife content. No men really give a shit about watching women bake cookies unless she's naked. Unless it's trad wife content in lingerie or something, men are not really watching it.
There's less cultural purchase there, but plenty of podcasts where the audience is primarily young men are not super feminist necessarily. So I think the media environment is definitely a factor. And everybody I talked to talked about, real difficulties for young men in terms of education, in terms of finding jobs. When people are having a really hard time in their lives is not their most generous time or their time of most generosity toward people who are different from them or toward people who they see as competing with them, which is sometimes a narrative you get about young men and young women. So I think that's all in the mix.
If you just play this out a little bit, it seems like this is going to be a problem, right? With young men and young women moving in different directions, wanting different things, having competing visions of, what it means to be a dad or a mom. And I mean, and of course, politically, young men are moving to the right and women are moving more and more to the left. Actually,
women have moved way to the left. Men have kind of stayed still, honestly. I think the Overton window has kind of shifted to where men just look more right wing, where women have ran all the way as far left as they can get. Did you know in the UK they just passed an abortion after a 9 months law? Like, you can literally just suck them out and chop them up now. Look it up, I promise you.
I think the drift with women to the left has been a little bit more pronounced than men to the right, but still that is a general movement. I mean, how's that going to play out, right? Both politically and just culturally, right? I mean, if something has to give, no?
It's definitely something that I think we see in a lot of data and something we talk about a lot, something that has real implications politically for elections. It has implications for families. But I think the bottom line for me, just from all my reporting about families and childbearing and all this kind of stuff, is there are lots of ways that we could make it easier as a country for people to have the families that they want. And I think that would end up benefiting everybody, right? Men, women, people of all genders. I think things like paid leave, and I'm not just talking, experts talk to me about this too, things like paid leave or affordable childcare, that would probably help women. It would help women who are like, gee, I'd like to have a kid one day, but I don't know if I can handle it with my career, and I don't know if I can afford it. And it would help men because it would convince more women that they are okay with having children. So if you're worried about all these men who really want kids and women are not so sure, a great way to address that worry is to support the women. And I think that ends up helping everybody across the board.
Is there a world where women are able to have children without paying the professional price?
You can't get them to have children for free. It's not going to work. Somebody's got to pay the price. And if you have either women are attached to men, or they're attached to a job, or they're government. But somehow, some way, they will be attached to something because women want shit for free.
They've had to pay.
Sure. I mean, there's plenty of countries where the wage gap is smaller. Generally what people talk about, again, is things like paid leave and affordable, accessible childcare. In countries where women take really long leaves, like a year or longer, you tend to see less parity career-wise and wage-wise. But in countries where women can pretty easily take 6 months and where they then have access to good childcare options that are affordable, you do see better parity. It is possible. It's not pie in the sky. Another thing that experts pointed me to is Scandinavian countries that have introduced paternity leave that is sort of use it or lose it. So, the family has X number of weeks of leave. Y number of weeks can be used only by the dad. So if the dad doesn't use it, then you don't get it. Yep. And that really incentivizes men to take that time and has been a big driver of social change in the countries where it's been tried. So, that's that policy costs money, but it's pretty simple. And I think would have a big effect.
I'm a little concerned that politics are actually moving in the wrong direction in terms of getting us to the place I think you and I would prefer to be. I'm more.
What's it the wrong direction? Why is it the wrong direction though? Notice how the wrong direction is always moving toward having normal family life. There's this giant push to make a regular normal family life somehow the bad thing, and it's undesirable. They're literally trying to scare women out of the home.
Fair place, a place that's, actually makes it more possible for people who want to have kids without having to pay prices they shouldn't have to pay and don't have to pay in other places. In terms of the politics, do you think the direction we're going now is going to lead to a better situation here? Or do you fear maybe it's actually going to get more fraught and create more tension that will grow this gap, not shrink it?
I think it's...
So that's a long question. But.
No, yeah, that's a good question, though. I think it's complicated. It's tough. There's not a lot of evidence that any policy boosts birth rates very much. Like these are personal decisions for a lot of people. That said, there's a lot we could do to make having kids cheaper that we have not necessarily done as a country. And that I don't see a lot of appetite from, the White House to do. There's not a lot of appetite for universal childcare. There's not a lot of appetite for universal paid leave coming from the top. That said, there is a lot of appetite for those policies at the state level.
So this administration notwithstanding, it is your sense that
things would get cheaper if we had less immigration and we had less women flooding into the workplace and the university. We're totally like inflating the economies, different economies too. The sexual marketplace, the actual marketplace, the educational system. We're inflating all of these economies. Things would get cheaper if we stopped inflating them.
That policymakers around the country, particularly at the state level, are actually taking this seriously and looking for ways to materially change the conditions on the ground so that people who want to have kids can.
Yes, I think if you look at the local and state level, I think there's real movement that you don't see at the federal level, and then maybe you won't see at the federal level for a long time.
So all this pro-natalism stuff on the right, and again, pro-natalism is just a fancy word for people who want us to have more children and want government policies that make it easier to do so. All that energy on the right, what is that actually about? What is it? Is it the birth rate / civilizational crisis that's motivating that, or is it not just that we need more babies, but that we need the right kind of babies so that we can have the right kind of country?
Now, notice I told you this whole thing is very white coded. Now, from a political perspective, they constantly want to hint at the idea that white families are bad, but in reality, all people need to have family. And when the immigrants come over here, they have family, which is something she's going to point out in a minute. Watch.
Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Right. I mean, I think, when people worry about the birth rate, to my mind, the most rational concern is that as the population gets older, it will be harder for young people to care for elders. We'll have economic problems because there will be like a large population of people who are not working, but who are getting Social Security and other benefits, that it will cause sort of a care crisis and an economic crisis. I think it's rational to be concerned about that, and we can think about ways of mitigating that problem. At the same time, it is hard to separate this rhetoric from sort of racial ideology, frequently pronatalist rhetoric, but not always, but sometimes pronatalist rhetoric is coupled with suspicion around immigration, in part because a lot of problems with birth rate could be to some degree solved by liberalizing immigration policy. So if you're very worried about not having enough young people in the country, why wouldn't you let young people come and make a life here?
Yes, let foreigners take care of your grandma while she has dementia and can't actually make a complaint properly. I just saw a video, some guy in California, he got convicted of sexually assaulting an old lady, and it was like caught on cam partially, like walking around the house naked and stuff. Yeah, let the foreigners come and take care of your nana when she's old and can't really fight back.
And so you do get exactly the question that you posed, well, which families do you want to have more babies? Like, is it only white families? Because we have this long, long history in America of privileging white childbirth and white motherhood in particular, and wanting white mothers to have lots of children, but not wanting mothers of color to have lots of children, and not wanting poor mothers to have lots of children. So
notice how liberals will accuse the right wing of not wanting women of color to have lots of children, but then the liberals will also shove Planned Parenthood in all of the women of color neighborhoods, right? Anywhere where there's a bunch of poor black women, access to birth control is plentiful, right? Access to abortion care is plentiful. But then they accuse the Republicans of not wanting women of color to have children. Make it make sense. Shout out to Rational Babs, by the way, with the 5-ball. He says, for doing the Lord's work, Truth Church. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate y'all coming out there. Hit that like button for me, y'all.
Give me the money. Give me the money for all that I would do. Give me the money.
It's just very, very hard to separate the current moment from this very racist history and the way that America talks about children and childbearing.
Well, that's the reason I asked about what's motivating the pro-natalism, right? Because the motivations actually matter insofar as it will impact the sorts of policies you ultimately want, right? If your interest is in making, family life more, feasible for everyone, that's different than if your primary interest is, preserving a particular culture. If that's what's driving it, I don't think that will result in policies that will benefit everyone.
Yeah, I mean, something that I've been thinking a lot about recently has been the question of sort of which children are valued in America. So there has been a lot of very public concern, especially though not exclusively on the right, about people aren't having enough babies. Americans aren't having enough babies. We got to have more American children. At the same time, policies of the current administration have done and are doing real harm to children around this country. And we know from the first Trump administration.
More politics again. They can't just talk about men. It's always about some political shit. And to be fair, though, this is very political. What is it about anger that makes men right wing? It seems like the lonelier and the angrier men get, the more right wing they become. And I guess there is a perception that the liberal left wing culture is the cause of their anger and their loneliness, and so they're reacting directly against liberalism in the left wing. But as more and more men get angry and lonely, they're going to get more right wing.
Administration and the family separation policy, that those separations were incredibly traumatic for your children and had long lasting effects. And now current immigration policy is causing those same kinds of traumas again, either by detaining children and separating them from their parents, or just by inducing an enormous amount of fear. There are families who are sheltering in place almost the way that they did during the pandemic because they're afraid to go outside and have someone detained or deported. I will say, too, that in my reporting, overwhelmingly, people who work with kids said it's not just children from immigrant families who are.
Why are you talking about immigrant families in a conversation about young men wanting their own families? Like, what are we even doing here?
What do you think people should be paying attention to?
So another parent recently told me that a lot of boys are using ChatGPT to help them talk to girls. I'm curious about this. I'm curious if girls are doing it too. So I might look into that. And then on sort of a more sober note, I continue to be interested in impacts of ICE on kids. And I'm starting to work on a story looking at parallels between what's going on now with ICE and the isolation that people felt during the pandemic. So a lighter story and a heavier story.
To end on a lighter note then.
But yeah, it seems like all the numbers right now are pointing to a huge gender divide in younger men and women. And I think this is probably a phenomenon that's new across like time. I think definitely before the 90s, at least, a lot of younger women would have probably wanted to have a family more than men. And I just think culture and economics, and certainly like this feminist pressure, this propaganda from feminism, has kind of shifted women's attitudes a lot. I don't think it's even the economics as much as it is the fact that like women kind of hear a constant chant of how awful men are, how bad and dangerous family is. You know, there was that video that went viral a couple of weeks ago where some woman, I think she was in Australia maybe, but some woman had held a baby for the first time ever. And like, she just broke down in tears just because holding a baby was such a like physically cathartic act for her. She never really knew she could feel that way. And I want to talk about this in closing too, this idea that, you know, women just get fed a lot of propaganda that scares them out of the home, essentially.
So recently, I did an intro video discussing misogyny. I made the point that America was built on patriarchy, which produces misogyny, and that the three major religions in the West are primary drivers of that misogyny. We focused on the Christian Bible because that's what I'm most familiar with, but some of y'all produced examples from Islam and Judaism too. I also used my own journey to help connect with men by identifying some of the ways I've been misogynistic, even within the last year. It was mostly love in the comments, but some Black men were not trying to hear that noise. Some comments were brief and angry. More than one person directly called me homosexual, while one person left a supportive novel. Welcome to my job. To those who didn't like it, I'm glad y'all spoke up, because now I got a lot of comments to go through and debunk one by one. This is my favorite thing to do. I'm a fact checker at heart. Let's explore all the negativity, the myth of the man-hating feminists, and the misconceptions around feminism itself.
Now, he's trying to tell us that man-hating feminism is somehow a myth, y'all. Shout out to True Hype with the fly ball. They talk about everything else because they don't care about the main topic, but it's so unavoidable, they have to pay some lip service to it. And this is actually one of the victories of the manosphere. For whatever criticisms people might give about this whole online male space, it is forcing a reaction. For better or worse, it is forcing a reaction. It's becoming the thing. It's the elephant in the room now politically. When they talk about, you know, Democrats losing the Black vote, that's mostly a male thing. When Democrats, broadly speaking, can't get the male vote, it's a problem for them politically now, because as more men move away, they're going to drag women away from it too. And you have to now talk about these things.
In the intro of that prior video, I said this. For anybody who's tempted to dismiss this as the rant of a male feminist, you're right. You know what's on my side, though? The facts. And it didn't go over well with a couple of y'all. Let's take a deeper look into the reasons why. These first two comments match, essentially saying that I lost y'all by claiming I'm a feminist. You must be new here. That isn't some new revelation, but let's roll with it. We got to define feminism based on what it actually means, not how y'all warp the word to fit your narrative. Britannica defines it as follows: the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. The challenge
you can never, the sexes will never be equal without an immense crushing amount of force. And that's the problem with feminism. The amount of force required to achieve true equality will effectively destroy everybody involved.
I say to every single person who pushes back on men being feminists is this: pick a part of that definition to disagree with and defend your position. Is it the social, economic, or political equality that rubs you the wrong way? You can't attack this definition without being sexist.
Again, in order to achieve your dreams, you will have to burn down the kingdom and everyone inside of it. That's how you create equality. We can only be truly equal once we're all dead and ground in the dust. That's the only real equality there will ever be. And short of that, you will be on a never-ending quest to constantly change, constantly force a new thing, constantly redefine a thing. This is what's been happening over the last 75 years.
And that's my entire point. In order to actually score points in a debate, you need to come up with your own definition, like this bot did. I'm not calling them a bot as a joke. This is literally a bot. I'm only engaging with this bullshit because the point is similar to what some other people said later.
Literally engaging with bots now. Knowingly talking to bots now. That's It's a very interesting choice.
Taking the edge off said, quote, male feminists are just a patriarchy hiding behind soft words, end quote. That would imply that it's brave to stand your ground and back the patriarchy proudly, right? But that's the majority position in America and always has been. So who's really taking a risk? You did this to yourself. Let's take a look at your profile. Oh no. Typical white alpha male cartoon avatar, which means this is probably a foreign incel.
Notice the racial banging, and he's responding to an account with 1 subscriber and 2 videos. You really bent yourself that far over to talk to a bot? It's crazy.
The same video twice with different font on the thumbnails. Let's watch a little bit of this bot video.
The subtle genius of this propaganda lay in its ability to make women believe that the art of
He's really battling bots on the internet.
Homemaking was a place of stifling oppression, positioning the workplace as their real stage for liberation. This was a calculated move by capitalist forces that saw an opportunity to harness women's labor in the workforce to further fuel economic growth.
AI voiceover throughout, and the central message is that feminism is actually co-opted by corporations that want more workers to exploit. So therefore, quote unquote, modern feminism isn't as pure as the definition I gave y'all earlier. The claim hinges on the belief that feminists just want to be the patriarchy, and they've been tricked by corporations to fight for equal rights.
That is actually more accurate, though. Feminists do want the power and the control. That's what they talk about when they say controlling their reproductive rights or controlling their fertility, right? They want to have the leverage and the control and as many social interactions with men as they can possibly manage. And they can enforce that by government fiat effectively.
Thinking women are being tricked into feminism by some kind of false flag operation is actually more sexist. Congratulations. I get the suspicion that corporations are trying to co-opt the movement. I understand that. They try to co-opt every movement. That's what capitalism does. There just isn't any evidence that those attempts are responsible for what you call modern feminism. The Supreme Court, responsible for removing their right to control their own reproductive systems, is mostly male and mostly conservative, which means almost all of them uphold the patriarchy at every opportunity. You know what would never happen? A court telling me what to do with my dick. Oh, but you think you own that baby inside a woman because you helped with half the DNA before her 9-month gestational nightmare? And instead of talking these differences out with your partner, you want to create a legal environment where 9 states can ban abortions with no exception for incest or rape. Interesting.
Notice there's all this man shaming, but it's a simple reality. Each one of those children are some man's progeny. Why should a man just be happy that a woman can do whatever she wants with his offspring?
This dude said women are up on all fronts in 2026. White men make up about 35% of the US population, while black women make up about 7.4.
Notice this is about black women competing with white men. Why should black women be outpacing white men in senior leadership? Why would you even desire for black women to outpace white men in senior leadership? You want them over you too as well. Because if they're outpacing white men, they're definitely outpacing black men. And again, you're not happy until you somehow dethrone the white man. All this is just white coded, very white coded. There's a lot of white bitterness here.
4% of the US population. Here's the percentage of VP roles and C-suite positions each of them fill. Looking hella lopsided, right? Yeah, I thought so too. And since I know you're going to ask, this is the distribution between black men and black women, specifically in the C-suite. Each block represents 1 unit of representation or 1 percentage point.
So men of color are outpacing women of color, which is normal.
We got one more. I'm pointing this out because one of y'all said black men are going through more than black women right now. Economically, that's highly unlikely. We're promoted more often, disciplined less harshly, and operate under fewer societal restrictions. Since
he just said black men are promoted more and disciplined less than black women. They've had entire movements about black boys in particular being disciplined too harshly in school.
We live in a patriarchy.
Most of those police shootings are black men, by the way. Most of the police abuse and assault happens to black men, by the way.
That's also becoming more fascistic by the day. As another approach, you could turn the word feminist into a slur that refers to this imaginary wave of man haters, when in reality, you're hyper-focused on a few examples of women who legitimately hate men. The internet is a big place. I'm not denying that these women exist. I want to break this one down line by line. Quote, why is it only black men are held to a higher standard? This is called whataboutism, and it's completely untrue. I made one YouTube video, and you use...
He didn't say what about. He asked you why. Completely different frameworks. You see how phony niggas are? It's almost like you can't read in your own video.
Men. The internet is a big focused on a few examples of women who legitimately hate men. The internet is a big place. I'm not denying that these women exist. I want to break this one down line by line. Quote, why is it only black men are held to a higher standard? This is called whataboutism, and it's completely untrue. I made one YouTube video, and you use that to ignore the fact that there's hundreds of white women on YouTube who center their entire channels around tearing down the patriarchy.
No, notice he keeps racializing everything. Is it about gender or about race? These things aren't really like intertwined the way you want them to be.
Next line. Make a video regarding black women disrespecting the black man and women having modesty. First off, I don't work for you, bro. Make it yourself. I can't tell you how many times men, because it's almost always men, which is making my point for me, come to my channel full of my videos that I spent days, sometimes weeks creating, and then give me orders.
Shut up, bitch!
Black women disrespecting the black man is the next line. Look, there's literally thousands of videos about that on YouTube. You're only asking me to do it because people actually watch my videos. Let's go back to women having modesty. Again, you're making my point for me. Have you ever in your life heard anyone tell a man to be more modest? Specifically in the way you're referring to here? No.
No, actually, no. People don't tell men to be modest. They tell men to shut up and dribble and things like that. Get back to work.
You haven't. Just a half a second of introspection before y'all hit the keyboard, bro. Please. Next line. Black men get beat up and picked on by everybody these days, including by black men. Is that what I was doing? I presented my own problems with misogyny as an effort to connect with your dumb ass. And
you presented yourself as guilty in an effort to say all these niggas is guilty like me, and you all need to get like me. I'm a better reformed, bespectacled Malcolm X glasses wearing nigga. You need to get like me.
You twist that into me bashing black men. Presenting critique is not the same as picking on someone. For a group of people claiming to define masculinity by going your own way and being immune to emotion, y'all are really thin-skinned. Last line, stop the pandering, bro. We all have things.
This nigga just responded to a whole bot, though. You calling people thin-skinned. You out here talking to AI. You got an attitude with the AI. You calling people thin-skinned.
To work on as people, but stop signaling out only black men. Actually, I was talking to all men. You made it racial. Claiming I'm pandering is an effort to discredit my analysis. If I'm just making this video to appeal to black women and only black women, then it's easier for you to deal with the uncomfortable truths I rolled out. Things that appeal to black women can't possibly be valid, right? It's also easier.
Well, the point is, a lot of the things that we are selling to women are intentionally detrimental to the men.
To ignore the story I shared about my own struggles with misogyny in my recent relationships. What part of that vulnerability serves me? I could have kept it to myself and acted like I already got it figured out. And
nigga, you made a whole video about it to make money, asking what part of that vulnerability serves me. You up here trying to be FD humidifier on YouTube. FD minifier, FD fagifier. You want to be the new FD guy.
Preach to y'all from a pedestal. That was for your dumb ass. Moving on. A core issue with the implication that misandry or the hatred of men is as significant of an issue as misogyny is your ignorance of the power imbalance. I've already covered this with the Supreme Court example earlier, but the best way.
Oh, it's a power imbalance. This is, this is a concept I need to think about. The morality of victimhood. The idea is simply like, because I'm smaller, I am more virtuous. I am more of a victim. I experience more danger, therefore my vision is more correct. My outlook is more accurate because I experience more fear. Because I feel terror in a particular situation, therefore I understand the situation better. There is a type of morality and victimhood that they're attempting to like foist upon everybody, and I think it needs to be explored. There seems to be a particular framework. This is why I'm framing it this way. There is a morality to victimhood that they're attempting to kind of exert onto everything.
I can put this metaphorically, is to compare it to the black-white racial discrimination gap. Claiming those are the same in both directions is a wild take that would make sense if you knew absolutely jack shit about history or society at large. Black people could not make a Jim Crow happen if we wanted to. We don't have the numbers or the institutional power to pull that off. White people.
South Africa is happening right now. South Africa has implemented Jermaine Crow.
People are actively trying to take us back to Jim Crow right now, as I broke down in my Project 2025 series. Do you see what I mean? Y'all just don't like being the problematic side of the equation. I didn't like it either, and I made that video to be honest about my journey, not to pander.
Now, notice I just did a whole video explaining how it's actually young men who want to have family and children more than young women. The problem is actually with the women. They believe things that just make family and pair bonding and marriage difficult, if not impossible. And there's guys like this out here, like I said, scaring women out of the home.
It's crazy how every time a man deconstructs negative aspects of masculinity or the way masculinity is shaped in this society, we're accused of trying to appeal to women. It's particularly ironic because everything y'all lames do is about attracting women, despite your internal hatred of everything they represent. But back to that prior comment, some black women call us the white people of black people.
Notice there was a comment. He said he was going to go through line by line, and he totally didn't. And he misread that first line. This is like literal YouTube con man shit.
And comments like this make it evident that they're right. This is some Karen shit.
Why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country?
And so are white people.
Did I just spend all this time replying to comments? Yes.
Black people are not dying in any crazy numbers at the hands of law enforcement. That whole thing is a lie from the George Floyd era. Everybody got hyped up. Everybody was doing lines of George Floyd cocaine, and they started believing that the police was really after them.
Did it feel good to get that out? Yes, it did. Every now and then, I got to set the record straight. Using your comments to get precise about my arguments is an excellent method in my eyes. This is a lesson to people dropping bullshit on my videos. You might get got. In conclusion, let's talk about the myth of misandry. It's the real issue bubbling below the surface of a lot of these criticisms, and it deserves its own breakdown. I read articles on this and did research into why it's a thing, why the philosophy doesn't really stand up, all that. I'm going to restrict that to facts because y'all love to parrot sayings like facts over feelings and facts don't care about your feelings. This is an academic study.
You know, this guy kind of makes me think FD Signifier and Derek Jackson somehow made a baby. Through just their sheer love of black women combined, FD Signifier and Derek Jackson somehow manifested a baby, and this is him.
But I want to address this simping allegation. Do I simp for black women? Yes. I love black women. I don't like y'all niggas. It's an easy decision to make. Sorry.
Not an opinion blog. I got it linked in the description so you can see it for yourselves. It's pretty compelling.
Just because a bunch of college kids write things on a white piece of paper doesn't mean it's actually true. college has been captured. There was a whole scandal recently where like the very I forget what you call it, but like the idea that your paper is somehow going to be double checked and verified by like a body of knowledgeable, authoritative sources. You know, there's some type of verifying system about your white paper. It got totally debunked recently. That's what made James Lindsay famous, honestly. They started submitting the most ridiculous woke papers, and they just kept getting approved and then circulated and commented on as if they were just some kind of groundbreaking thing. But in reality, it's just a bunch of people smelling farts and writing them down on paper.
Studies, they quote, examine the accuracy and underpinnings of the damaging stereotype that feminists harbor negative attitudes towards men. In study 1, with 1,664 people, feminist and non-feminist women displayed similarly positive attitudes towards men. Study 2 replicated those results among almost 3,900 male participants. The only study here that comes close to anything near what all these commenters were implying is the conclusion they drew from studies 4 and 5, where feminists were shown to see men as more threatening, but also more similar to women. I don't know if it's news to y'all, but men are more threatening. We've been collectively murdering men and women on a daily basis for centuries now.
People kill people. Women kill men too. Women kill their husbands. And again, I keep reminding y'all, there have been years, especially around the time when Bill Clinton passed that Violence Against Women Act, Black women on more than 1 year, I believe, outpaced Black men in domestic partner homicide. Like, they will literally get rid of you.
This article from the Women's Aid Organization, again, rigorously sourced, says, quote, whilst both men and women may experience incidents of interpersonal violence and abuse, there are important differences between male violence against women and female violence against men.
Notice, women's violence against men is different. It doesn't even hurt. It's not supposed to hurt when she hits you.
Only the amount, severity, and impact. I'm sure even some of the men who commented on that last video would agree with that. But here's the really crucial part. Quote, women are more likely to experience higher levels of fear and are more likely to be subjected to coercive and controlling behaviors. Men do not experience domestic abuse as part of embedded structural inequalities against their sex.
Actually, they do. This is why women know all I got to do is, call the police. I'll hit myself and call the police. They have a thing called the Duluth model. Well, they had it. I don't know if it's still in active effect, but for many years, they had a system called the Duluth model, where basically, even if you were a small guy, didn't matter. Because you were the man, you were categorically treated as bigger, stronger, more threatening. Therefore, you were the bad guy. Again, the morality of victimhood.
For women, however, domestic abuse is deeply rooted in inequalities between women and men, end quote. That's the whole point I've been stressing. Not only are we more violent and more deadly, we aren't dealing with a system designed to suppress our rights or the level of coercion we exert on women.
Anyway, I think we heard enough for today. I think we're going to wrap this one up here, though. You know what? Because I got to get out of here, guys. Appreciate y'all coming out for the day. Thank y'all so much for watching the show. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's pray for the youth while we're at it, y'all. We got to pray for the youth. A lot of evil forces preying on the youth out here right now.
How dare you say that we are not interested in families in the Black community?
But I appreciate y'all coming out today, man. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button. I will catch you guys later.
Aspiring to be patriarchs like what white men have, that isn't freedom. That isn't going to help anybody. It's certainly not going to help Black people.
It's done. It's done. It's done.